Hi everybody. So today I kind of want to talk about what I've been up to the last year, and particularly this summer as it relates to this project. Many of you guys are already pretty familiar with this project, but we have some new folks in the room and new members, so I'll give a little bit of background to begin. This project was originally conceived as an installation work that would allow viewers to enter inside of this piece and sort of experience the inner workings of the camera. 4 years ago, when I was first beginning to dream this up, I would have never thought that it would have grown quite so much larger than myself, both symbolically and physically. It's quite a piece. Originally titled Target 616, Brownie in Motion is it's an installation work. It's a portable darkroom, working camera, and sort of a tongue-in-cheek monument to the death of analog photography. In a single year, it's gone from here in Columbus all the way to Baltimore and Oregon, and none of which would have been possible without you guys. So thank you to the factory. I designed the outside of this camera after the Kodak Brownie, which was kind of a revolutionary camera that was released in 1900, invented by George Eastman House, that allowed any schoolboy or girl to make good pictures. And really, with the Brownie being invented, it opened up the possibility that really anyone could be a photographer. Eastman also sort of invented the commercial processing industry, which was really democratized things. It was a game changer. So it was cheap, easy to use, and I kind of wanted to tap into that history with this piece as an installation that had this level of accessibility, could be appreciated by young and old. I was really happy when I discovered this slide the other day. I love the similar thing going on with the girl with the camera. And building this was a lot of work. I had a lot of help from friends, collaborators, different organizations. I was able to kind of bring in people like my friend Brittany, who is much more skilled than I with working with fabric and folks at the Idea Foundry using their lasers to cut out vinyl and just help with different aspects of the production. Even our very own Roman took this picture on the bottom left. I don't know if you remember that. You were in my studio and you shot that. As a photographer, I kind of started working with the medium right as this interesting time when digital is first becoming accessible to the masses and film still in wide use. And so, in the last 10, 15 years, we've seen a lot of changes happening. And see Kodak and Polaroid going in and out of bankruptcy as their products are largely no longer used. And I did a project, this was like 4 years ago, right around the time Kodachrome was discontinued. It was a project all about the history of sort of the photographic industry changing and sort of dying off in a lot of ways. Where I was traveling around shooting on, oh my goodness. I was photographing at camera shops, interviewing photographers, camera repair places, film processors, making interviews and shooting all with this film stock in the last 6 months that you could get it developed. There was one place left in the entire world that was doing it in Parsons, Kansas, a little place called Dwayne's Photo. And this is actually taken in Parsons, Kansas at Dwayne's Photo. On the very last day, they stopped accepting the film for processing.
So this is the digital picture?
No. I was shooting on Kodachrome, and then I literally got to just like hand them my film afterwards, and they sent it back to me a couple weeks later.
So this is meta, very meta.
Yeah, super, yeah. Very referential to process and materials. And so I'm thinking about, how photography's changed. And now, as I've been working with the camera obscura, I'm thinking about how things are changing in other media as well, different crafts, trades, as digitalization really kind of takes over. And I'm not a Luddite, but I question what we might be losing as a result of this. And so I kind of conceived of this project where I wanted to use the camera obscura to photograph, interview other people in other areas, kind of telling their stories. Other areas practicing like disappearing trades and crafts and techniques. So I'm interested in kind of sharing that history, preserving that history, and last spring I started fundraising through Indiegogo, and was able to raise some funds to help make this happen this summer, and sort of take the project out on the road. We needed to get some new equipment, kind of work out my developing system, and I've been using this tube thing to process images on site, and it just wasn't working. So I guess I should explain. So I can, this piece is not just an installation. As I said, it's a working camera. So this is a photograph of this guy Dave that I met, and I was like, I gotta bring this guy to the studio because he's an interesting looking person. And so I was sort of testing things out. Oops. What is happening? Working with this tube system and shooting images directly onto paper, developing it, and I was really having trouble getting consistent results. They'd be interesting sometimes, but it was kind of all over the place. And so there's a pattern that's sort of imprinted on Dave's image on the right, and I kind of became convinced that a tray system would work better, like this. This was shot more in a studio setting, but using trays to develop large sheets of paper to make images. So I need to get that sort of together, raise money for that. And it took more time than I thought to kind of construct everything and kind of make it happen. But finally, we sort of hit the road this summer. And this is where we can talk more about movement. I went out with a friend, to pack this van full of all the gear that we would need to sort of start working on this documentary project. So some things, as I said, were just built right before we left. So we're sort of field testing some of it as we go. And so whenever we use this device, the camera obscura, we have to build it. It's all constructed out of pipe. We build an armature and then attach the skin onto it and to kind of create the walls. And so we're out there, we're testing things, looking silly in the desert, getting really hot inside of this box. And so this was one of the early setups as we first started, sort of working out our process. And I don't know, as we worked, things got smoother. Feeling pretty good about kind of getting control of things, how we're going to work together. And by the time we get to Utah, this is in Colorado. By the time we got into Utah, feeling pretty good. And we were on our way to this event called the Great Oregon Steam Up. This wasn't not steam like we talk about. It's literally steam power. People really interested in mechanisms that are sort of powered by steam. But as we're on the way there to participate in this event and meet and interview people there, decided to stop at the Bonneville Salt Flats, thinking, well, this is just a kind of fascinating landscape. We're shooting landscapes as well, as you saw from that other ridiculous slide of me. And so we drive to this small town, Wendover, in like western Utah. And sort of this, we arrived kind of at night. We kind of go out to check out the area. Like, we're not going out into the actual, deep into the landscape that night. We just kind of want to feel things out. And discovered this sign there, which should have taken this as a warning, maybe. This sign filled with bullet holes. It's a very strange place. There's nothing around it, just like some road, but then salty mud on either side of the road. And then the speedway, where they do land speed racing tests and strangely enough, Hellfire missile rocket launches, I found out. It's an area owned by the Bureau of Land Management. So it's very empty space. And as we arrive sort of to the entrance to the speedway, we see the sign and we're sort of checking out the scene. And this photograph is made by placing, there's a flash behind the sign. I kind of wanted to highlight the voids in it. You know, it was totally dark there, extremely dark. But I kind of found this to be an interesting.
Oh, so we're looking through the sign.
We're looking at the sign. We're seeing light shine at us through the sign. So it's a wireless, a flash attached to a trigger that's on a stand behind it. And I'm looking at it, lights shining through it. So really starting out right in the middle. You can kind of see, if the room was darker, it'd be a little bit, you could kind of see the definition a little better. But, okay, so we were there. Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. See, I don't have my notes, so I'm elaborating more than I normally would. So, okay, we're feeling pretty good. We get to this, the Salt Flats. The next day, we're going to go out and photograph out on the speedway. And so we get there. This is right at the entrance, just past the sign. Drive through this sort of little water area, and then you get on the hard-packed ground. And that's 10 miles straight of this hard-packed landscape. There's cones on either side. They kind of show you this is where the space is. This is where you can safely go. And there's no sign that tells you that there is only the last cone. Has 2 stripes on it, where you're not supposed to go past that. So we're driving down this thing, seeing how fast I could get the van to go. It seems to top out at 93. And we passed this last cone, and then we could feel, which I didn't know was the last cone, I could feel the land changing, the kind of tractions changing. Okay, we've got to try to slow down, turn around, and it was not happening. So we ended up, movements ceased for a day. And so I spent the day trying to dig a rig out of this salty nothing. And if you ever go to this Bonneville Salt Flats, 1, don't go past the cone. 2, be aware, cell phone reception isn't good. And we tried to dig ourselves out. We called a towing company, talked to them for a minute, got a quote, and they're like, we'll call you back. And we tried to dig ourselves out again. And then we just kept getting deeper and deeper. So when I try to call Mr. Toback, the call keeps dropping. So ultimately, I have to walk back several miles till I get a signal, call them, they send somebody out. Hooray, right? Oh, this is what the land looks like. Strange little pellets of salt everywhere. Okay, yay! Trucks arrive, things are good. Micah runs out to go meet the guy. He's so happy. We've been there all day. Then it stops about 100 yards away from us. I'm like, what are you doing? Come on, get over here. Like, what is happening? We're wondering. And so they had brought a mud cat out on a truck. The mud cat had dropped, and they put it on the ground, it had come to meet us, and then it stopped. We discovered the battery had died on the mud cat. So Danny, the driver, has to call in the maintenance guy. At this time we've been there, we kind of got stuck. Oh my, I can't even finish in 1 minute. Yeah, we've been there since like 9 in the morning. It's like 5, 6 o'clock at night. Finally, maintenance guy comes, we get pulled out of there. Like, oh my, this was crazy. But I like to tell that because it's kind of a fun story. Now it's fun to say, but you know, the whole trip was not like that. We finally we did make it to the Steam Up, which was a really interesting sort of family event. There was these sort of steam-powered engine enthusiasts, people who collect antique tractors, all sorts of strange old machinery, and we ended up speaking with some of those folks, interviewing them. This is an image of this guy, Don. He's the president of the Antique Caterpillar Machinery Museum. I'm going to have to breeze through these now. This is Gary Martin. I know his partner in Oregon. Gary makes these wooden forms that are then cast into to metal. Like we see a mold or a pattern on the left side of the screen. That's going to be like part of a park bench. So whenever we go someplace, I'm always like photographing the object as well as trying to make pictures. This is a wood turner. It was really interesting. We never knew sort of where we would end up. This is arguably not a disappearing craft, but my God, it just seemed like interesting subject matter when we ran across it. And so it was really kind of an amazing experience. People were very willing to open up in many kind of instances and kind of share a little bit of what they do in their life. This guy makes like essential oils and tinctures. He is not a meth cook, as many people like to ask. And so, as I said, whenever I take this someplace, I always like to photograph it. I think this is another, so that it's a documentary project, but I also have this other aspect of thinking about the camera taking on a life of its own, as it sort of discovers America for itself. This was a glory moment for me, getting it there. We didn't really have light to actually make a photograph with it, but I am just happy that this photograph exists. And so, since this trip, this is from Franklinton, since this trip, I've really been sifting through all this stuff, and there's so much material to go through. It's funny, I didn't necessarily have to go that far to find interesting subject matter. There's something like interesting stuff happening everywhere, right? This is Cosi, this is a World Naked Bag right here in Columbus. But strangely enough, in this sort of random Brownian way, sometimes it's about this process to discover things that are close by you. This summer, I brought the camera to North Carolina when I was assisting this daguerreotype workshop, which is a really early photo process. And it's quite a way. It's a drive, right, from here. But in the process of doing this, I discovered that not just like an hour and a half away from us here in Columbus, there's a guy who makes 19th century tintype and daguerreotype cases, the most obscure of trades, which is kind of a fascinating subject. I recently took a workshop with him and will be photographing him sometime in the near future. So it's kind of, sometimes we discover things in a roundabout way. So now I'm sifting through all this imagery. I've got thousands of digital images, hundreds of film images, and then by comparison, a very small number of images made with the camera obscura. As I prepared this talk, I wasn't really sure how I wanted to end. I feel like there's so much still to do, and I'm still going to continue working. So, as opposed to trying to bookend this into a neat little bow and everything squared off, in the interest of maintaining motion and movement. I will now open up the floor for questions. Questions? I'm done talking.